All right, welcome to the Young Turks, guys. It's a Friday. We're going to do our power panel as usual. But before that, I just want to do a quick opening statement about something that's in the news, and then we'll get on with the rest of the show. So some of you might have seen some blog posts that I wrote 18 years ago that some people happened to find online. And I'm sure most of you didn't see it, but that's okay. I'm going to tell you about it anyway. And I know now more people will see it. But that's okay, because we learn and we grow on this show, and that's what we try to do together. And boy, back then did I have a lot of learning and growing to do. So some of the stuff that was written on there was totally offensive, insensitive, ignorant. If you read it and go, wow, man, you need to learn a lot, you're absolutely right. So if any of you have already read it, I certainly apologize to the people who were offended by it, because you were right to be offended. And it was a young, immature guy back then trying to show how cool he was by being edgy and politically incorrect. Well, what I didn't realize back then, and I think that I've learned throughout these years, is that being politically incorrect sounds fun to you, I guess, when you're a young guy like that, but not everybody sees it the same way. And if you're making jokes about sex as I was, you might see it a little bit differently if you look at it from the perspective of a woman who has been harassed or assaulted. Then you look at it from a completely different perspective, and understandably so. What we've been trying to do on this show for the entirety of its existence is to learn to empathize with one another. And look, it is not an easy process, and I've said probably about 1 million times on this show, the hardest thing in the world is to escape your own perspective. And I wish I could go back to the younger Janking and explain that to him. And if someone had written this stuff today, I would probably be harsh in criticizing them on air and try to explain that to them. So look, you guys have seen me. This was stuff that I wrote before we started the Young Turks, but you guys have seen me involved with your own eyes on the air on so many different issues. So I debated Mario Cuomo on the Young Turks for about an hour back when we were on Sirius Satellite Radio. I took the position of being pro-death penalty. Well, that turned out to be massively wrong. It turns out at least 4% of the people on death row were innocent. So, boy, if anyone's owed an apology, it's every pro-death penalty person should apologize to the people who are innocent on death row. So, look, I can go on and on. In the beginning, I didn't believe in climate change. I had absurd ideas that mold wasn't real. Jesus, how weird is that? And so, as I've told you dozens of times on the air, I held pro-war rallies when I was in college. I've written terrible things in college as well. And I think and I hope that I've learned a lot from that and grown a little bit. I wish I had grown up a little quicker and learned to empathize with people way earlier than that. I think that I've been on the road to progress and justice for the last 15 years. And again, you guys have seen that. You've seen the movie Mad as Hell, which was a movie about this show. You see my transformation too, from the public access days to the radio days to the online and TV days. And so I'm asking for the people who have read it and were rightfully offended, of course, for your forgiveness. And for all of you, your understanding to some degree. And I hope that we continue to grow together on this show and start to and continue to spread that empathy to everyone involved. And I hope that for those folks, again, who were rightfully offended, that being on the road to progress and justice, never fully arriving, but being on that road is a good thing, and that it's a positive note that we have gone through this journey together. So for all the mistakes that I have made in that journey, and they are plentiful, including those blog posts, of course I apologize. And by the way, I deleted them not yesterday when the news reports came out, but over a dozen years ago. You know why? Because I didn't stand by them. I looked at them and I was like, that is embarrassing. That is totally wrong and inappropriate. So I think and hope again that folks can come to an understanding where they say, I think this guy's getting a little better, and everybody's got a lot of work to do, most especially me. So again, I hope you guys understand that, and that we continue conversations on this show that get us to a place where we see each other's perspectives better and have more empathy towards each other. And I'm certainly trying hard to do that. Thank you for putting up with me for all these years and through this as well. All right, let's start the show now. All right, not as festive a power panel as we would normally have, but Mark Thompson's here, Brett Ehrlich's here. We are gonna do a great show for you guys as always. And unfortunately, we start with the tax bill, which is fairly disastrous.
Yes, the tax bill. The tax bill has been signed by President Trump. He essentially was originally planning to sign it in the new year, but then when reminded that he made a promise to sign it before Christmas, hastily called some people together at the White House in the Oval Office. And it's always interesting to me, at least, to see what people say before they sign a law. And so here's video of the president speaking to members of the press about specific things that he thinks are important inside this bill.
The typical family of four earning $75,000, we see an income tax cut of more than $2,000. Many much higher than that, slashing their tax bill in half. And they're going to start to see that because we're signing today. They're going to start to see that in February. The corporate tax rate, as you know, will be lowered from 35 to 21%. That means that more products will be made in the USA. A lot of things are going to be happening in the USA. We're going to bring back our companies that they've already started coming back. I think they had certain confidence in me. They figured we were going to get this done, but they have already started. Something very important to me, the family farmers and small business owners who lost their business because of the estate tax. Most of them won't have any estate tax to pay. It will be a great thing for their families. You can leave your farm to your family. You can leave your business, your small business to your family, not even so small, because the numbers are pretty big.
So that's his framing of the estate taxes around small farms. That's what he
said.
You
can leave your farm to your family.
Yeah. So if you don't know, the estate tax, now that they've doubled it, means that you can leave $22 million and none of it will be taxed. It's taxed above $22 million. It used to be $11 million. So let's just take the lower number because that's what it used to be. He's saying, well, man, when you had that tiny little farm that was worth $11 million, and then you had to pay taxes above $11 million. If it was worth $12 million, you had to pay taxes. And by the way, it's not you. You already paid taxes on it. It's not double taxation. The people you pass it on to, who maybe worked on it, maybe didn't work on it at all, that are getting a gift, will get taxed for the first time, but only if it is above 11 million in the past. Now it's got to be above 20. It ain't small business, it ain't small farms, it's giant, in some cases, yes, farming companies, etc. But overall, rich people is what the estate tax applies to. And if you didn't understand what he was saying about, like some companies, they're coming back because they had confidence in me. What's he talking about? Well, AT&T said that they're going to give like $1,000 bonus to, I think, about 200,000 employees, and Trump immediately took credit for it. And AT&T was happy to encourage that because they'd like their merger with Time Warner to be approved by Donald Trump. So he's like, oh yeah, that's it. And then everybody criticized him. They said, you know that they've been working on that with the union in negotiations for a year. So that's why today he comes out and is like, they had confidence in me. That's why they were working on it already. All right.
So he signed the tax bill into law, and he did frame it that way. He said, like, this is huge for the middle class along the way. He mentioned one thing about middle class tax cuts based on stats that he had cherry picked from it. But then the rest of what he said was about big inheritances and corporate tax loopholes. So, but now that it has been, things are in it like pass-throughs, the repeal of the individual mandate. He doubled the standard deduction, keeps the carried interest loophole for hedge fund managers. What's next? Now what? Now what should people be looking toward now that they have passed this tax bill?
Well, so they say, and look, I got to be fair, right? So when we talk about nonpartisan analysis, you got to call it like it is. I thought that the amount that the middle class would get would be a little bit lower, but some nonpartisan places have determined that it might be as much as $900. So hey, that's not bad. A lot of people are going to be excited about $900. By the way, that's for the first 10 years. After the first 10 years, everybody's taxes under the income of $75,000 go up, not down, they go up. Your tax breaks go away and you get burdened with more taxes, but the corporate tax cuts are permanent, okay? But I just want to give you context. The same report said the top 1%, their average tax break will be not $900, it'll be $51,000. See, I can't quite tell who's making out better. Can you tell? I'm not that good with math. Help me out here.
It seems to me like the play here is, all right, we are going to cut the corporate tax rate. We are going to do that because that's what we've always wanted to do. The establishment Republicans have been doing that. But then it's like they say it's to keep in obeyance of the rules of having to only take 50% of the Senate in order to pass it. But it seems like that 10-year window before the raising of the taxes kicks in is kind of a keep us around. Like, you're gonna need us Republicans around. And what about this strategy that, like, yes, we have alienated a lot of people. This is a wildly unpopular tax bill.
Well, but there is money, as Cenk says, for the middle class in the short term. Again, they message really well. I mean, it's clunky. To us, it seems sort of obvious and stupid because it's a kleptocracy where corporate America is just taking all this money off the table. But Trump hits the middle class, and that messaging is getting down to those people. I mean, I was reading some stuff today, all these people who are, that man on the street type stuff where they talk to people in diners and who have, they supported Trump, they were against Trump, whatever. And they all began to sort of regurgitate the stuff that they'd heard the president saying at these different photo ops. So there's that, okay, which is the sort of, well, it's gonna trickle down. We've heard that a million times. That's what I was reading a lot about that. And there's also the fact that there is a short-term tax cut. And so as those of us who want to take the next election, or the midterm I'm talking about, have to face the fact that some people may be saying, well, wait a minute, I've got a little more money in my pocket.
And I want to be clear about this, and that is certainly going to happen as I explained earlier. But for about a third of the middle class, taxes will actually go up a little bit because it depends, because they took away a lot of the middle class exemptions. And so, for example, state and local taxes, you had basically an exemption for that. It's a little bit more complicated than that, but for some folks, and it's not a coincidence that more in the blue states, you will actually have your taxes increased. So for those folks, they're gonna be like, Trump keeps calling this a middle class miracle.
Yeah.
You'll be like, well, that is quite miraculous that somehow a tax cut led to me having higher taxes. It's a little weird miracle there. So, but for the ones who do get the tax cut, they might go, oh wow, okay, that's nice, and that might affect them a little bit. Which, by the way, is how these guys always said, oh my God, Obama just wants to give money to the people that support him and that voted for him. The Obama phones. Obama phones, I mean, you're just giving away $51,000 at a time to the top 1% and trying to also buy off people for the elections. And don't forget, one more fact for you guys, top 1% get 80% of the money in this tax cut.
Right, the middle class miracle is it's a miracle if the middle class ends up buying this. It makes me feel like the image that comes to mind is like, I wanna break into the safe, but there's a guard, so I just throw like $40 this way so the guard runs away so I can go raid the bank for the people I'm in cahoots with. That's what it seems like. And for the religious people out there, it does feel like the 30 pieces of silver to betray everything that you stand for. It seems like they are going and giving the money to the money lenders out there and the people, and they have more designs. Mitch McConnell, we might get into this later, has designs on repealing some Dodd-Frank regulations. It seems like they're just trying to pay you off with chump change right now, when by definition, if 81% of the benefit goes to the highest earners, if there's this ridiculous carried interest loophole that benefits hedge fund managers, they could have given you more. And if they cared about you, they would have given you more, but they don't. The only thing that they've proven is that they want to benefit their donors, so their donors will back them in the ridiculously difficult project they have coming up, which is to overcome the unpopularity of the president. So they want to appease their donors so the money keeps rolling in. And then they just kind of want to piss on your leg and call it rain.
That last point that Brett made is important, because as we look at the midterms and you look at how unpopular the president is, it may just be about that donor money. And so, as Brett says, addressing the donors and just soaking them with cash may allow you to then go to them and say, hey, we need your help coming up. We don't want to lose these seats.
And to be fair to Trump, he's actually doing really well in raising funds for the Republican Party with the donors. The donor class loves him. And I mean, if you just got trillions of dollars, you'd probably love him too. Unfortunately, you didn't, which leads me to my last point, because another thing that Brett said that was so great. Number one, going after the safe, as Brett described, part of the safe is Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. And on day one, right after they passed the tax bill, editorials coming out, Paul Ryan saying, no, we're gonna have to control the cost of entitlements because that's what the real problem with the budget is. Don't look at the money we just stole. We're gonna take it from your Social Security and Medicare. But secondarily, so if 80% of the tax cuts are going to top 1%, it's not like they don't know how to write laws. They could have written it in a way where you got 80%, where the middle class got 80% of the tax cuts. They chose not to do that. So there's 1,000 different ways that you could write it. You could say, hey, it only applies to these income brackets. You don't have to double the size of the estate tax. You don't have to do the pass-through income so that real estate barons like Trump and Bob Corker get all the money. They could have designed it so that it actually gave the majority of the money to the middle class, but they chose not to. They gave you just enough money to distract you while they gave away most of the farm, maybe literally in this case, to the rich and to the corporations.
Yep. One last thing, because it's very like soul crushing. There was a lighthearted, hilarious moment on Inside the NBA with Charles Barkley, talked about the effects of trickle-down economics now that there's a new tax cut. Take a look.
We'll give out the Christmas presents, man.
Yeah, we're going to be doing that on Inside the NBA as each.
This will be my second one this week, my second big gift.
Okay. One more shout out.
Oh, that Republican tax cut. I'm gonna say, Shaq, they said it's gonna trickle down. You know, I'm gonna trip.
What you gonna do, Chuck? You were on a roll.
Trickle my fat ass down to the jewelry store and get me a new Rolex. I'm not gonna pass it to nobody.
No doubt.
Thank you, Republicans. I know I can always count on y'all to take care of us rich people, the 1%. Sorry, poor people. I'm hoping for y'all, but y'all ain't got no chance.
Hey,
that's why I love Charles Barkley.
Yeah, the truth, you know.
He's been-
And by the way, just on the trickle down thing, I love that they didn't even sort of reconstitute trickle down in any kind of inventive way, even in the pitch, you know. It's the same old crap trickle down that's been proven wrong over and over and over for decades. But still, you hear it, you know, it's the way. And now, Charles Barkley, hashtag truth.
Yeah, it's become a punchline and they don't even realize it. That's why this bill's polling at like around 30%, which is incredibly unpopular. And Barkley was a Republican for most of his life until George W. Bush, actually like significantly into Bush's first term. So when he was asked way back in the day, why are you a Republican? He said actually his grandmother had asked him. I don't know if you ever saw this old quote, it's great. He's like, his grandmother said to him, Charles, why are you a Republican? They're only for the rich. He's like, Grandma, I am rich. and during the Bush era, they asked him, well, okay, what's your problem? I mean, you always pro being rich and the Republicans help you. He's like, yeah, I was with the Republicans until they went nuts and lost their minds. By the way, same thing happened to me. I mean, we're going to Iraq. What are we going to Iraq for? Torturing people? Why are we torturing people? Okay, Charles wants another Rolex, but he doesn't want you to torture anybody over it, right? And here he's being lighthearted about it, as Brett said, but he drives the point home. You're not going to get anything. Charles Barkley and most importantly, all the rich Republican donors are going to get Rolexes and yachts. And it isn't going to trickle down on you except in the way that you imagine.
But that messaging, last thing, that messaging about the trickle down has still been effective enough. And so the idea somehow that these factories, and Trump hits it so hard, these factories are going to now have the ability to hire more workers and all this sort of thing, not addressing any of the other sort of economic realities, which is that demand drives the hiring of people, right? I mean, it's not because the company already had this money and now they have additional money, so now they're going to hire more people. There are other economic elements in play, obviously, but the messaging is so strong. Again, it may not hold, and I think it'll melt away. But just in this moment, I feel still as though we don't have the high ground on messaging.
At the very least, this is a highly unpopular, as you said, tax bill. It's
there
at
is
30%.
Yeah.
People seem to be seeing through it.
They seem to understand.
I can't believe that trickle down was like the name that they settled on. The hubris of being like, you guys should be happy that you get a trickle. Like a trickle is a small, like it's a hilarious word because it's like trickle, like little tiny, stupid, ridiculous bits. And that's what they settled on. Trickle down, you're welcome. You get a trickle.
Yeah, I mean, you're so right about that. Trickle sounds like little furry alien balls in Star Trek. Like, oh, here comes the trickle.
Did you buy the new trickle toy?
Right, and it Trickling is what you say sometimes when you're peeing, okay? And it's got the word trick in it. It's like the worst possible framing. And for about 40 years it still worked, but I really think that right now, when the average American hears trickle down, they think, fuck you.
Yeah.
Like we tried this for 40 years. I'm at $7.25 minimum wage. It hasn't trickled down on any of us. The rich keep getting richer and we're not. So I think that really grates on their last nerve, which it should.
Yeah. I hope that's true. I mean, and it makes sense that it would, because those are the realities, and I think the economic realities will become quite clear, especially in conjunction with some of the other programs that are getting rolled back. So you're going to have a lot of people in need, more than you had prior to this legislation. Anyway, hope you're right.
All right, we got to take a break. We're going to get into the consequences of this for the 2018 races, especially as framed by Mitch McConnell and what he's had to say about Steve Bannon.
Oh,
don't go away.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Cenk, Mark, and Brett with you guys. Taoist Hermit writes in, Cenk, that was an excellent apology. There were many other public figures who could learn from your example. Well, I'm not sure that's true, but thank you. I appreciate you saying that. It's very, very, very nice of you. All right, J. Thomas Gordy says, I don't think Trump is aware of how much the average family of 4 actually makes in this country. Oh, there's no way.
That's 100% true.
How much could a banana be? $10? That's what it makes me feel like.
Yeah. I would be surprised if somebody said to him, what is the average annual salary in America, if he didn't say at least $200,000. I'd be really surprised.
A lot of people are making that. A lot of people are making that.
A lot of people are making that money. Okay.
I'm hearing that.
I'm hearing that from people. Digital Shark says all those small farms worth $11 million. Boy, oh boy, did I get into the wrong field, literally and figuratively.
Oh, wow.
And Amber the Brave asked a very good question. When you say the corporate tax cuts are permanent, do you mean the next administration can't fix it? Well, so no. Number one, when we say permanent, it is to distinguish it from some parts of the bill that have sunshine provisions, or sunset provisions, meaning that after a certain period of time, usually 10 years, they are no longer in effect. It automatically goes back to the old rates or to new rates where you're further screwed, right? But the corporate tax cuts don't have a sunset provision, they just keep on going. If Bernie Sanders comes in and wants to raise it, could he? Sure. He would need, obviously, Congress to agree, and it would be a Herculean task. And every multinational corporation in the world would spend literally billions of dollars fear-mongering, hate-mongering, every kind of propaganda you've ever seen to try to defeat it. And it would be a political war to end all wars. So once they make the change, it is way harder to undo. I would argue that shouldn't stop us at all, and we most certainly should undo it. Let's see, I hope that the next progressive president has the courage to do that. Speaking of progressives, I just want to do one quick thing here, guys. So come to me for a sec, guys. I want to talk about there's so many wonderful progressive candidates in the country I'm so proud of, but one in particular that we introduced to you guys on this show, Allison Hartson. So she was a teacher and then got into, took a pay cut to fight money in politics, joined Wolfpack, and eventually got promoted to national director, where she was still making way less than she would have as a teacher. Anyway, she decided to run against Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein is one of the biggest Democratic establishment figures in the country. People said no chance, there's no way. Just want to show you 2 of her tweets from yesterday. She writes, grateful and motivated by the 6,000 plus individuals who have donated to my campaign, making us the largest funded and supported campaign for California US Senate to date, and without any corporate money. Wow. Help us reach our next goal by December 31st. And then she's got her page there. In fact, I'll give you that in a second. But look at the second part of this. So she shows the screen grab from Act Blue. So let's go to that. November Act Blue disbursements for California Senate candidates show early support for progressive challenger to Dianne Feinstein. Allison Hartson at $181,000. Feinstein only at $71,000.
It warms my cold, dead heart.
And then another guy who's a local politician that everybody's like, well, he's a politician, so he's gonna do great. Nah, doesn't look like it.
Wow.
So now this is Act Blue, so to give you full context, it doesn't mean that those are small donors. So Allison is crushing Feinstein among small donors. And 6,000 plus donors, I don't know if Feinstein's got as many as 6,000 donors this quickly in the race. Feinstein overall has more money. Why? She's got giant donors. She's got defense contractor donors. She's got all those kind of multinational corporations and super PACs supporting her. But the small donors making a huge difference. So keep it going. December 31st is really important. So let's keep on beating them. justicedemocrats.com/Allison is where you can donate. By the way, if you want to volunteer, that's awesome. It's AllisonHarson.com/volunteer. But can I see justdemocrats.com/Allison here? I want to see where we are today. 187,830.
Wow, that's great.
Can I see 200,000? Can I see 200,000? Let's try to make that happen. Let's scare the bejesus out of the establishment.
And I'd say it's like almost like matching donations, because if that becomes the narrative that small donors are out giving for Allison over Diane, then that can be the narrative and that can become the story to create even more PR for her.
No, that's a great point too, yeah, build momentum for her.
Yep, and then one last thing I want to change real quick, or check on real quick, because yesterday on Rebel Headquarters, I had Mike Mineta, and National Director for Wolfpack, and we're trying to raise donors for hiring a new guy, John, whose nickname is the Closer. What are you going to do? Not hire the closer? Then we can't close. So Mike told me that actually a lot of you guys did sign up yesterday in the middle of Rebel Headquarters, but it turns out they have a process that's like slow to register them. So I just wanted to see where we are with it. They're trying to get to 250 by the end of the year. 174, because yesterday was 147. You guys are awesome, you're phenomenal. So let's keep it going. Let's try to get to 250 by the end of the year. We only have about a week left. Let's hire John and make sure that they're fighting in all the states. Thank you guys. All right, what's next, Brett?
Donate quick before the ice behind him melts in that photo. We're gonna get some more EPA news later. Okay, so the Republicans pushed the tax bill through the legislative process, but there is still drama going on between the establishment wing of the Republicans and the Bannon wing of the Republicans. Today, Mitch McConnell made a statement when asked about the effect of Bannon's brilliance on the Republican Senate campaign in Alabama. Those are the two sides, and here's what Mitch McConnell had to say.
Do you blame Steve Bannon for Doug Jones being elected in Alabama?
Well, let me just say this. The political genius on display, throwing away a seat in the reddest state in America, is hard to ignore.
Just that response. I mean, he knows he's got a good one. We did a modified version of that clip. Let's take a look at the response of Mitch McConnell to Mitch McConnell when he's done with that burn. Take a look.
Do you blame Steve Bannon for Doug Jones being elected in Alabama?
Well, let me just say this. The political genius on display, throwing away a seat in the reddest state in America, is hard to ignore.
It's like the littlest smirk from the slowest burn of a burn. What do you take away from that statement?
So I take away a couple of things. One is he had the line teed up. He just had to remember it. No. That's why he paused in the beginning. He's like,
let me just say this.
Oh, right. Political genius on display. Like I practice it in front of the mirror. Okay, and he was so proud of himself. That's as much joy as Mitch McConnell can show. Like there's not much joy left in Mitch McConnell's heart. Right? So it's that's gonna last him for a decade. So now onto the substance. Look, I think, so I said this during the election, somebody did Oppo research on Roy Moore, of course, right? And so when the Republicans were saying, oh, why right before the election? Yeah, right before the election, because somebody did Oppo research on Roy Moore. And I'd always assumed that it was the Democrats because they didn't release it during the primaries when it could have helped Republican Luther Strange. They released it, and by released it, I don't mean the press. The press didn't, like they go and give it to the press. The press does independent work. As Project Veritas, the clowns, conservative right-wing clowns found out, turns out if you give them nonsense, as they tried with Washington Post, they're like, Yeah, no, that's not true. We tried to check it and it isn't true. So you give them true stuff, the press then does their own research, but it's a thing called opposition research in politics, it exists. But Mitch McConnell hates Steve Bannon and his wing so much, I think there's even some chance that the establishment Republicans did the Oppo research, and knowing that they already have 51 votes and that's all they need for the tax cuts, that maybe, just maybe, it's just speculation, that he might have buried Roy Moore to send a message, not just to Steve Bannon, but to anyone who would dare try to take on an establishment Republican. So they could say from now to forever, hey, remember Roy Moore? Remember when you try to take on what the incumbents in the establishment told you about, there's a heavy price to pay, so don't ever do that again.
I think this moment definitely is that. This moment is like, oh, you thought you were pretty smart, didn't you, Bannon? All the stuff that we were doing saying, can we please have Luther Strange, someone who already got favors in order to be the chosen son of the establishment when it comes to Alabama politics? You go with us. You went against us and see what happened. You just pissed away the bigot, you ran up, it was a come on man moment, you were about to dunk the basketball and you just beefed it off the back of the rim. And this is Mitch McConnell saying, you messed up.
Yeah, clearly.
And give us back the mantle of the Republican Party, because we just passed tax cuts.
He views Bannon as someone who's taking that mantle, right? And Cenk's notion that it could be, in a sense, this underhanded way that you lay the foundation to make that point is a really cool one. It had not really occurred to me, but clearly the beatdown moment we just saw, which is, hey, Bannon, go do your Breitbart shit. You're out of your league.
So what about, where's Trump come down on all this? Because we can go to graphic number 4 for this. This is when it comes down to all the things that the Republicans have to face in the coming year. Mitch McConnell says the White House will be in the same place I am when it comes to all the impending legislative challenges that they say that they face.
So no, McConnell for the moment being has won a resounding victory. So Bannon was a total epic fail in Alabama. Then McConnell helps to get the tax cuts passed. Now you might say, look, man, anybody with Roy Moore would have lost. But hey, that's why you shouldn't have run Roy Moore, you knucklehead, Steve Bannon. And you could say, hey, anyone could get the tax cuts passed if you've got 52 Republicans right now. Well, that's true. They're all beholden to their donors. But nonetheless, that is what their appearance is. And what does Trump like? He likes winners. And they told him in the back Luther Strange, he did. And now he lost to Roy Moore. But they said to him, don't back Roy Moore, that's a loser. Bannon convinced him to back Roy Moore, oops. Now Trump's thinking, oh, Steve Bannon, he's not winning anymore. He's not winning anymore, hey, McConnell. And he just tweeted, McConnell's doing a fantastic job. And then McConnell was kidding around and saying, I'm starting to warm up to Donald Trump's tweets. And then he's out of joy for 10 years. So anyway, so McConnell is definitely right. And one last quote from an insider. They explained, and you could tell it's a Trump insider because they said, the best decision Donald Trump made was firing James Comey. And I was like, really? Okay, so it was like a deep Trump insider. But the second best decision he ever did was getting rid of Steve Bannon. I was like, damn. If guys that are that loyal to Trump are that turned on Steve Bannon, he's in a world of hurt.
Who knows what Bannon's gonna do? Because Trump can just kind of stoke the base in the background and then do all of his legislative accomplishments, of which I'm talking about. The only legislative accomplishment he has is gotta piss off Steve Bannon. If you look at what Bannon stands for, it is 100% in the service of everyone around him in Washington, and that is the McConnell wing. That's the only way that Trump has seen a victory. However, the victory that Trump won to win the White House was thanks in large part to Steve Bannon. And Trump, the winner of the election, is Steve Bannon's guy and not Mitch McConnell's guy. Mitch McConnell would have chosen somebody else. 2 points. One is that he is, we've learned, very much in touch with Steve Bannon. Now, Steve Bannon's star may be fading, as Cenk's saying. I mean, he's not winning lately. But still, a lot of the Steve Bannon ethic and philosophy is being played out. I mean, you see the dismantling of government. We're going to get to the EPA story, I think, a little bit. You're going to see, and you're seeing it at state, at the State Department, where positions go unfilled. This is not an accident. This is all, Steve Bannon is really the architect of a lot of that. So
I still think you see the fingerprints of Steve Bannon on a lot of stuff in this administration.
So you're right, Mark, and everybody knows Trump's a petulant child. So he might, in a moment of pique, turn back around towards Steve Bannon. He might do that 12 different times, go back and forth, back and forth. But I want you to understand what's more important, which is the underlying dynamic in American politics, which is if you want to win an election, be populist and actually be progressive. And Steve Bannon knew that. So one of the things that he pushed for was to get rid of the hedge fund loophole, right, on carried interest. And he told Trump to run against the banks. That was actually smart. That's why, I say all the time, Steve Bannon is a terrible guy in 1,000 different ways, especially on the issues of race and ethnicity, but he's not a dummy. And he said, Trump, go do this, appear to be progressive so we can win, right? And they did. And by the way, Mitch McConnell knows the same thing. In his own election in Kentucky, in the last 2 weeks, he ran nonstop ads in favor of the healthcare system down there known as Connect. You know what that is? Obamacare. So Mitch McConnell ran on Obamacare for his own election. You want to get people, and what did Trump say during the election? I'm never going to touch Social Security, Medicare, or Medicaid. Now, it wasn't true. I'm going to go after the banks and I'm going to protect you. None of it was true. But when those guys who run those campaigns, the minute they win the campaigns, they no longer care about the voters. Because the whole point was to trick the voters. Now they have to serve the people who gave them the money to trick the voters, and that's the donors. So then it is not a surprise, it's not out of the ordinary that after the election, the establishment settles back in, even with a guy like Trump. Bannon is kicked out, McConnell's back in charge, and what happens to that hedge fund loophole? They don't take it away. And in fact, they increase the loopholes for the rich and for corporations. And if Bannon is saying don't do that, well, he's got to go because the rich got to get richer.
To that point, one item according to this report is that McConnell said is almost certain to act on is a bipartisan bill easing regulations on small and medium-sized banks imposed under the 2010 Dodd-Frank financial oversight law. The bill, which passed the Senate Banking Committee this month, has 12 Democratic co-sponsors.
That's so two priorities. In the House, Paul Ryan says we're going to cut Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid. And in the Senate, McConnell says that's his next top priority is to help the banks. To help the banks. And to my point about the donor class always wins no matter what, 12 Democrats have already signed on to it.
Exactly.
Because they've got the same donors.
All right, moving on. You may have, I think, reported yesterday on the show was the UN vote as to how to respond to the American decision to, recognize Jerusalem as the capital. Nikki Haley is throwing a party. For who? Well, for the countries that didn't vote for the president's new Jerusalem policy. 128 countries voted in favor of condemning our move to recognize Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. As for everyone else, according to Michelle Nichols, the Reuters UN bureau chief, she tweeted this: the 8 countries who voted no with the US on the UN General Assembly Jerusalem resolution, the 35 who abstained, and the 21 who did not cast a vote have been invited to a reception by Nikki Haley as a thank you for friendship to the United States. Here is a screen cap of the actual literal save the date. The Honorable Nikki Haley, permanent representative United States mission to the United Nations, invites you to a reception to thank you for your friendship on January 3rd. So a formal invitation is to follow. I just think this is so weird that there's like a new friendship meeting that they're throwing for people who sided with us, but not just, there's only 8 people who voted with us on this. There were people who abstained, and to be fair, like abstentions from these votes are typically like, they are not just like, I don't care, they are, I abstain for reasons, but also people that just weren't there get to come to this new world disorder party.
Well, so it's a mixed bag. Yesterday we told you Canada felt like they had to vote against the US because Trump had gone so over the top that they would seem like his puppet if they voted with the US after the threats. It would seem like they caved to his threats. So they actually switched their vote. So it was counterproductive in that sense. But I would imagine that a lot of these countries who either abstained or did not cast the vote wanted to get invited to the party. And they don't care about the hors d'oeuvres at that party. But the party they're talking about is financial aid that the US gives.
Yeah.
So a lot of them were tiny little islands. Some were smaller countries in Africa, they desperately need the assistance. So Trump was able to bully some of the weakest countries in the world. I hope he's proud.
It's great, and at this party you will need to wear a name tag because some people may not have heard of these countries. I mean, there's like Israel, I can count them right now. Israel, Guatemala, Marshall Islands, Micronesia, Nauru, Palau, Togo, and the US. So
some of those countries are so small they have micro in the name.
But that's what it is. And then everyone gets, and then there's plenty that abstained, and for various reasons, Mexico and Canada among them. But a lot of countries that are our friends voted against us, and they voted to come down on us for our decision to do that.
The whole thing with this particular UN posture that we've struck, though, is kind of a weird mix of the bully, which is the natural Trump move. Hey, we're going to get you. We're going to pull our money, and that entire posture, which is consistent with Donald Trump. And then, as Cenk and Brett both say, this sort of inducing your help or your support, I mean, again, from these very small nations, by bribing you, which is really the American way. And in truth, that's really the way we've done a lot of foreign policy and pursued a lot of foreign policy in this country for decades, maybe since, for the last century. So it's the brutality, it's kind of the tough talk, bully on the street part of this that has been inconsistent with, and certainly the party is just crazy, you're right. I mean, it's like exotic drinks and pass-arounds, for the handful of
It's just so weird.
Countries that have supported.
Like seldom does something happen. My reaction is, what a weird moment. What a weird thing to do. And really what it does is the president drew a line in the sand, is like, and it vibes with some people to say, like, why are we paying for the United Nations if they don't really give us anything? If people in it are going against us. And I totally get that is a good message. It's an effective message. But it's just so weird to then have people afterwards who say, all right, I'm calling your bluff. Then that's just like, someone open for China to come in and be like, you need a railroad, you need infrastructure, you need us to invest in your country. And it'll take you 40, 50 years to realize how you got screwed by that. But in the meantime, we're paying for stuff for you. And then Russia, everyone gets to identify who it is that's kind of, on the chopping block, or at least up for grabs.
And look, there's logical, strategic reasons for why you would want to give money and not give money, et cetera. So for example, we give a decent amount of money to the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank. Number one, because they're not Hamas and they're not, they keep the West Bank way more under control than they do Gaza Strip. Number two, if they don't, they go, well, I could take away those hundreds of millions of dollars, and people panic. So the largest recipient of US aid is Israel, but number two is Egypt. The reason is they did the peace deal, and part of the peace deal is, hey, you're gonna get a lot of money, Egypt, for all these decades. And guess what? They've had peace. So, and then to Brett's point about, hey, what Trump always says, well, what's the UN doing for us anyway? Yesterday, Nikki Haley went up and said, I don't know why Israel tolerates the UN. What has the UN ever done for Israel? Founded it? Right. So I think I would have gone with a different argument. So
what's your take on the argument of countries that are our allies who are like, listen, this isn't a vote against the United States. This is a vote for the previous policy that the United States went against.
Yeah, no. Look, I love the US. I want us to get better. I want us to become a more perfect union. We're definitely wrong on this. So any ally that voted against us is trying to help us, and I appreciate that. Like another vote in the UN for the Iraq War. The French and all of our allies that voted no didn't do it to hurt us. They were trying to warn us. And it turned out, of course, they were right. And our, as usual, Republican administration at the time was wrong. And here we are again. And again, the bluster of the right wing will say, oh no, we're gonna crush everything in our path and throw parties for people who are on our side. But as we saw with the coalition of the willing, those parties don't end well.
Yeah. We got to take a break. We're going to come back. We got more stories to get to, including Trump is building not one wall, but two. We'll tell you where they are and why he's building them after this.
All right, back on the Young Turks, Cenk, Brett, and Mark with you guys. Unstable Canadian writes in, Cenk, you should stop calling them donors and call them what they really are, owners. Yeah. I think you are pretty stable, actually. I'm going to agree to disagree with you.
Just owners. Owners. Like the Bears.
Owners, the owners.
Yeah.
That's not bad.
The owners.
Kind of like that. And the Justice, the owners. Oh, man, I really like that.
Yes.
We got something
They
here.
did a thing this year.
But you know what?
your idea?
Unstable Canadian, that was a collabo. So I'm going to give you guys. I'm going to give you a T-shirt. Okay.
Nice.
Yeah. So
very well done.
shoptyt.com. Everybody. What do I? Lapel pins are apparently almost sold out. That's the thing to panic on today. But we're not kidding. When they sell out, they do sell out. It takes a while to get bring them back. And a restock of mugs, along with new items like license plate covers and lanyards, are now finally in, apparently, because those sold out earlier. So shoptyt.com for the holidays. And Bud Askins says, Nikki's friendship party includes many countries that will not be with us much longer due to climate change and rising oceans.
That's so true. That's a great take. Absolutely right.
That's hilarious. But apparently you're getting a T-shirt too,
Oh, wow.
or one of those rare pins.
Those pins are awesome, by the way. They're like heavy, they feel expensive, they're good.
Okay. Peter Hamby wrote in on YouTube Super Chat, which we appreciate. I want to wish every one of the Young Turks a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. That includes you, Cenk, Anna, JR, John, Brett, and everyone else, and Mark. Merry Christmas to you too. Finally, Chelsea Charles says, TYT has given me perspective and led me out of my, quote, all lives matter mode of thinking. As long as we continue to grow and progress, that is what's important. Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays, TYT fam.
Oh, that's nice.
Chelsea, thank you so much, man. I super appreciate it. Every time I see one of those tweets or emails or anything or comments where you guys say we help to change you hopefully in a positive direction. That's literally, by the way, in our mission statement, which we've never read to you guys, but it's to try to bring, and it's a grand one, but we're try to bring positive change to the world. So if we've done that in a micro or a Micronesia kind of way, we really appreciate you sharing that with us. All right, let's do it, Brett.
All right, we don't always have ambassadors to countries these days, but when we do, they put their foot in their mouth. So this is an amazing moment from our ambassador to the Netherlands, Piet Hoekstra. He took the job on December 11th. He did an interview when he was asked to explain some of his statements about Islam in the Netherlands and whether there were no-go areas of the country. And he gave a weird response calling it fake news. The video put together from the news organization in the Netherlands that he was doing the interview with just is so crazy priceless. Let's take a look.
Speaking of threat, at one point you mentioned in a debate that there are no-go zones in the Netherlands and that cars and politicians are being set on fire in the Netherlands.
I didn't say that. That is actually an incorrect statement. Yeah, we would call it fake news.
Is that
I
fake
never
news?
said that.
Because it's what you literally said.
No, it's not what I said.
The Islamic movement has now gotten to a point where they have put Europe into chaos. Chaos in the Netherlands, there are cars being burned, there are politicians that are being burned, and yes, there are no-go zones in the Netherlands.
Oops.
So good, and it gets even weirder. They press him like, so we have called you out for saying it's fake news, and then we proved it wasn't fake news. They follow up on his having just called it fake news. Here's his response to that, and look please at the interviewer when he hears the response.
You call it fake news, obviously.
I didn't call that fake news. I didn't use the word this today.
No?
No.
Okay.
I don't think I did.
Okay, I think.
God.
He looks like, can we roll the tape immediately?
Yeah.
Is that possible?
Right.
So
Am I the one who took the crazy pill here?
Right. We don't have enough playback machines for this thing. Right.
So good.
But you know, I mean, this is the post-truth world. This is exactly what they're talking about, where you just keep on lying, no matter what. Like, well, you just said fake news. No, I didn't. But you're on tape saying it. We can just play it back. No, you can't. You said the cars and politicians were burning. No, I didn't.
Yeah.
Cars and politicians are burning. No, it's wrong.
Yeah, that was
Like what do you do? But that's exactly like our overall macro dilemma here in America, and now it's spreading to the rest of the world. What do you do when someone or a lot of people refuse to acknowledge reality? They just no, they don't care about the truth. That doesn't compute. Then we're talking different languages, And I literally don't know what to do with that.
I'm so glad you mentioned this, because to me, this is a real serious issue. And one of the great things about TYT, and you got in that one tweet, is that we try to get all the facts in. And sometimes the facts are balanced in a way, meaning that our position isn't always the one that carries the day. In some moment, we try to say, well, we try to be fair to. Anyway, overall, then, that's the way dialogues progress, right? That we have facts, they have facts, they examine our facts, we examine their facts, and then consensus is actually reached. But once you decide that your facts are the facts, and I don't care about the other person's facts. In fact, I'll even deny my facts and the fact that I've said what my facts are. I mean, all of a sudden you're in crazy land, and that's where we are. And it just becomes identity politics, and that's what is being played out right there.
That was Hoekstra saying, the people who support me don't care about the truth at all. So all of this is irrelevant. You guys will have fun with it. It doesn't matter. They'll look at that and go, oh yeah, Hoekstra nailed it.
There's a great quote, because Hoekstra was born in the Netherlands and his family emigrated to America. He was a
build a wall.
Build a wall. build a dam. Keep the water out. That's what they do in the Netherlands. Or just anyway. So he moved out, and he was a Republican senator or a Republican representative in Michigan for over a decade. And when asked what is it like for having an American ambassador to the Netherlands, who's actually from the Netherlands, one person said he's a Dutchman, but he's from the Netherlands of the 50s, because he has a number of positions that are just out of place in the Netherlands now. He's against same-sex marriage, gay rights, abortion, the death penalty. He's for the death penalty, and he's against refugees, and it's just he's not a popular person there. It's strange. And like, you're an ambassador, standing up in front of their media and just saying fake news and lying, like that is not a very diplomatic thing to be doing.
But the reference to the 50s puts him in lockstep with where this country is now, right? The ruling leadership of this country now is old white guys who are making it 1950 again. That's exactly what's happening. And so he's perfectly in concert with the administration that he's serving.
Yeah, all the hats, make America great again. Doesn't mean great for everyone. It means make America 1950 again. And the 1950s were great for some people, and they were terrible for some people. And that's exactly the 1950s they want to go back to. And Netherlands, bless their hearts, has advanced way past that. So when you throw this barbarian into their mix, they're like, what is this? I don't know what to do with this.
Who is this time traveler?
Right. And then here's my favorite part of this. Hoekstra, when he was in Congress, served as the chair of the House Intelligence Committee.
My goodness. All right, let's move on to Trump's trips. How about that? How many times has the president been to his own properties now that the year is coming to a close? Well, the answer is over 100. According to a report from CNN, Trump's Friday arrival at Mar-a-Lago on the heels of signing the tax bill, he just left and went to Mar-a-Lago. It's 106th day he's visited one of his properties as a president, a fact that critics argue helps the businessman turned politician boost the bottom line of the Trump organization. Just a quick recap of all the days he spent, how that breaks up. We don't need to go to the graphics. 34 days at Mar-a-Lago, 40 days at Bedminster, 23 times at the Trump International Hotel, just blocks down the street from the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue, which is weird. He's been there 5 times during his presidency. And then he also went to the Trump International Hotel at Waikiki. This costs the taxpayers not only an average of about $3 million for every 4 days that he's away, according to analysis of one Obama administration trip that he made. But also it costs a lot of money toward local law enforcement, $60,000 in overtime per day, according to CNN, the cost to the local government for protecting him.
So a couple of notes here. One is that stop that Brett mentioned. So on his way to Asia, Trump stopped for no reason at all in Hawaii so that he could go to Trump International Hotel Waikiki. It's just on our dime, a massive ad for his property. I mean, there's no reason to stop there, but he did it obviously for marketing. He's supposed to turn over his properties when he's American because he's not supposed to serve himself when he's president. He's supposed to serve all of us, right? and he won't do it. You're at a minimum, you're supposed to put it in a blind trust. He's like, I did. Well, where is it? It's in my son. Like my son's trust, he's handling it. Well, then it's not blind.
Right.
You know where all your properties are. That's why you're stopping at them, and you know your kids are running it. And he said about the tax plan, he's like, it's so good, I might go back into business.
You are in business.
That's what you're doing, except you're doing it on a dime. But to me, the numbers that really stand out is his 106th day. It's been less than a year. It's been 11 months, 106 days on his own properties, 80 days golfing. And he had the temerity to criticize Obama for golfing too much. I haven't golfed 80 days in my life. Okay, and I like golf. I like pitch and putt. I like the 3-par thing. It's fun. I'd love to go. I feel like I'm too busy to go on the weekends. The president of the United States has gone 80 times in 11 months. That's unbelievable to me.
Where have you been 100 times? Where have you spent 100 days this year? Like, I can't think. I got a gym membership. I'm like, I'm going all the time. 40, like that's super max this year. Where have I've been here 100 times and I've been to my house 100 times.
That's it.
Well, and look, the Trump hypocrisy is now, I mean, it's almost mythological, the way he was banging on Obama about, as Jank says, about taking so much time golfing. That was his big, this guy plays golf more than the pros, you know? And then, of course, Trump does that. How he's banging on Hillary about the email server and all that. And what do we find out? Everybody everybody, first of all, conflict of interest. He's surrounded by everybody who's got one interest or another at the White House, and they're all on private servers. I mean, sending government documents. So this cascade of parody continues, and he's an utter hypocrite. But ultimately, you get to the cost, and that's what really pisses me off. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars of our money, and again, from an administration that says, "Oh, we're going to cut the waste," and again, he was singing that tune. So it's hypocrisy on top of just profligate spending to secure a president who's just doing a big commercial for his own properties.
That's what it is. Like, I mean, you can argue that the Democrats don't care about the deficit. Now you can absolutely say the Republicans don't care about the deficit. Now it's down to how they spend the money they don't have, and I just rather spend it on people who need it. That's the difference. All right, and then one last thing is Trump was being sued by someone for the violating the emoluments clause, which basically says it's illegal for you to use the government to give yourself profits to your own business. That was dismissed recently because the plaintiffs in the case lacked standing, not due to the merits of their argument. So it was like, these people can't sue him, but they didn't say you can't sue him because of that. So keep an eye on that.
This guy's a parade of violating that clause, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's
that for another time.
He doesn't have Santa Claus, he has emoluments clause. That's his favorite clause. All right.
Emoluments is thinking, he gets the North Pole, I get Trump.
All right, one last thing. Hundreds of EPA employees are no more under Trump, according to a Times and ProPublica report. They say that, let's go to this graphic. They say, actually I don't know if we have it, but the Times and ProPublica reported that the departures were buyouts, retirements, and individuals quitting, but totaled more than 700 employees, including more than 200 scientists. Have disappeared from the EPA. Despite the decrease in science posts, there has been an uptick in political appointees, according to this ProPublica and New York Times report. At the EPA, according to Friday's report, 73 jobs have been filled at the EPA, but in the office of EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt to replace 53 openings. There's been a hiring freeze at the EPA. One person, one of the EPA workers union representatives, says that there was a hiring freeze and the Trump administration seeks to get rid of 3,100 full-time employees, and the budget hints at upwards of 4,000. So of course the EPA is under attack. In addition to Scott Pruitt being in charge of it, who was suing the EPA when he took the post, but Trump is still building walls to combat climate change. That seems to be the only place he's taking a stand against climate change. He's building 2 walls. One wall will be 2,000 feet long, while the other will be 840 feet long, the Times said. The barriers will be made out of limestone rock and placed in front of holes 1, 9, and 18 at his golf course in Ireland. The Irish Independent reported there will be 38,000 tons. And so he's taking apart the EPA. However, which seems to imply that he does not believe in climate change. However, his permit application to get the walls in 2016, he cited rising sea levels and extreme weather as its reason to build the wall. So,
my favorite part of that story is we just earlier in the week told you that the Trump administration made the Pentagon take out climate change as a threat to our military and to our country. He made them take it out, even though they actually think it is a security threat. And they've been saying it all along. But when it serves his purposes, he puts it in the permit to build the walls in Ireland. Oh my God, climate change. Did you guys know about rising sea levels? Nobody knew about rising sea levels until now. So I need the walls, and unfortunately they approved it in the case of Ireland, because actually there are rising sea levels. That part is true.
And what's going on at the EPA has more to do with a lot of things that affect the quality of water and air and what's leaching into the water supply from the earth than even climate change. You know, EPA deals with the Superfund sites that have been vastly compromised during the hurricane. Remember in Texas, the Texas hurricane, we found out there are all these Superfund sites. Those are toxified areas that were being inundated with water, so that all that toxic stuff was going everywhere. Well, those are Superfund sites that now a defunded EPA and gutted EPA can't address. So we're talking about real pollutants that are getting into the water supply of Americans. Add to that all the EPA restrictions which are being lifted. I mean, all those restrictions, regulations, as he's called them, that affect clean air and clean water across the board. So what you're seeing played out at the EPA extends beyond climate change. It extends to the air that we breathe and the water that we used to be able to drink.
Yeah, and in terms of the damage that they're doing at the EPA, so 700 employees gone already, as Brett told you. But according to their budget, they're going to actually get rid of 4,000 employees at the EPA. So if you thought, put aside climate change, pollution, the Superfund sites, all those things, the streams in your neighborhoods. Well, there's no more, you like cops, blue lives, these are cops to protect your family from something equally dangerous, which is the poison in the air and the water, et cetera, and they're taking all the cops away. So the robbers are thrilled.
Yeah, and his cherry picking of when, it just proves that Trump is disingenuous, period. When it comes to his interest in preserving his own property, he is saying, I only essentially believe in climate change in the coast around my golf course. That's the only time he thinks that it applies to anything. And then when it comes to the EPA where you live, he's like, oh, it's not a problem. But climate change is not a thing. Don't worry about it. It'll be totally fine. Which it just proves that he only uses these arguments when they literally benefit him personally.
Look, this is a guy who doesn't know climate change from he is regurgitating that which he knows is the party position on climate change and that which but the assault on the environment that he is unleashing, and the EPA and the gutting of it is just one part of it. The other part is allowing all of his corporate pals to do whatever the F they want in terms of polluting those streams, in terms of fracking and mineral exploitation on US parklands. I mean, what you're seeing is a selling out of this country and an assault on the environment on an unprecedented scale. And I think the EPA is the tip of that iceberg.
Yeah. But to be fair to him, he loves walls. He does, and he knows how big the ocean is. If you remember, during the Puerto Rico disaster, he said, Puerto Rico is an island surrounded by water, big water, ocean water. So maybe he realized, oh my God, Ireland also surrounded by big water, ocean water, and you know what? The ocean is sending a lot of trouble to Ireland, sending some of its worst. Some of it, some I'm sure is good ocean water. Okay, but they need a wall. Ireland needs a wall to keep out the dangerous ocean, big ocean water. I'm just trying to be fair to him.
Yeah.
He's been consistent on that.
Goodness. Well, that's what we have for me. I'm done.
Okay. You are indeed. Brett Ehrlich, pleasure to have you. Everybody check out Pop Trigger on the TYT network.
And watch Honest Press Conferences. We do them weekly.
Very
we take
funny.
The press conferences from the White House And instead of letting Sarah answer the questions, I answer the questions. But instead of the way she does it, I actually tell the truth.
It's very good.
No, you guys are going to love honest press conferences. Yeah, it lights Twitter on fire, let alone everywhere else it is. And then Hannah Cranston from Think Tank's coming up next. There's a controversy surrounding the Miss America pageant, and it doesn't even involve Trump. So there's a controversy within the controversy in that story. We'll tell you all about it when we come back.